adversity to be great. Say hello to my wife. I'm having what's known as a wardrobe malfunction. She is cutting my hair. This has been a dream of hers.
You can endear me to your millions of viewers.
To humiliate me on the air.
I always cry even though it isn't allowed. So proud.
You make me want to be a better screamer.
A better screamer.
No, definitely not that. Do you need adversity to be great?
Your skill is you tee up your guests and you make them look, so good.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. Such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go. Jump through the screen. But no, so true.
They can't see I'm dancing by myself.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
Well, welcome everybody. It is Monday. And it is time for CoronaTV. And I'm so happy to see you. You can see in the background, there are a bunch of naked people. I wonder what that has to do with my guest today. You are going to find out for yourself. By the way, I don't use that introduction as much as the others, but I do kind of enjoy seeing what I look like, with that beard. I mean, I don't even know if we can call it a beard, that miserable excuse for a beard, but also weight, right? I've lost 20 pounds. And so it's time to fat blog. And I actually put on weight. I put on weight this week. This morning, I couldn't cheat. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide. This is the whole point about fat blogging. I've committed to sharing this with you. So from 200.7 pounds, well, this week, I was 184.7 pounds this morning. Now, how did I get here? Well, last night, I'm confused actually. Last night, I went to dinner with my family. Only the second time all of us have actually gone to a restaurant since quarantine began or this whatever lockdown began or we came out of it. You know what I mean? Now, I'll tell you what I ate last night. And I don't understand how I would put on weight after the meal, after last night's meal. But maybe you can tell. Maybe you can tell me what the common thread was. So we had fried mozzarella sticks. We had bruschetta. We had normal bread with olive oil. We had garlic cheesy bread. I then had eggplant parmigiana with a side of spaghetti. I then had some of my son's French fries and 2 slices of his pizza. And I had a beer and a glass of wine. I cannot tell for the life of me why I put on weight this morning or what the common ingredient or thread was. But if you know what it was, maybe you can share it with me. But this was a departure. This was letting my head, ultimately a very clear demonstration of what happens when, you let go a little bit and when you embrace, say it with me, people, carbs. Carbs is the devil. Ian Altman is here. He said, without that meal, you weigh 5 pounds less. I felt so bad this morning, Ian, that I actually went for a run, which I've been doing, a lot, obviously. But I didn't need to run today, but I wanted to run today, and I'm happy I did. And I'll tell you, this was an amazing month for me because I ran 67 miles this month. In May, I hit 50. In June, it was like 55. In July, it was 60. And now in August, 67 miles. I mean, I've never run more than 50 miles consecutively for 3 months. And now I've done it for 4. So I know that the scales will revert. I know that mentally I'm strong enough. I know that I have the Mamba mentality. And this is what, let me tell you, David, he said, thinking taking weight daily is not a great idea. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Not only do I weigh myself almost every day, I weigh myself before the run, and then I weigh myself immediately after the run to see how much weight I lost during the run. And today I lost 1.8 pounds on the 4 whatever it was, 4.25 mile. It's just mental. It is mental. It's all mental. And I think that ultimately, in keeping with my guest today, your mind has to control your body. And it's true that your mind really does have this incredible power over the body. So appropriately, I guess it is August 31st, and it is National Trail Mix Day. I will not be having trail mix today. I am back and I'm disciplined. Here's someone who's also disciplined. Nick Diakanastasis. I got it right. Most people don't the first time, but I have practiced it. I cannot wait to bring him on. Nick is, by his own admission, an extreme introvert, and yet he's an actor. And he teaches public speaking and how people can avoid and counter stage fright. So we'll talk about extroverts and introverts, and we'll talk about public speaking. And this is a man who is disciplined, a man who also masters his craft. And the more he practices, the better he gets. Well, Nick kicks us off today. We've got Angus, Martin, and Warren for the rest of the week. And then, of course, on Friday, the audience or the guest is the artist formerly known as the audience, or Steve Garfield knows exactly what I'm talking about. But the people formerly known as the audience. I knew the word was there somewhere. If you are a regular during the after shows, you will most likely become a part of this monthly community-driven live show, and this live show will be on Friday. So 2 p.m. I will have up to 9 of my previous guests or just audience members like you. And if you want to be on the show, and if you want a platform, and if you want a voice, you have the voice. I don't have to give you the voice. I'm just getting out the way and letting you do the talking. If you want to, of course, get a sense as to who's coming up and what I thought about guests and my soliloquies, you know what to do. Just go to josephjaffe.com/subscribe or text the word CoronaTV to 66866 if you are in North America. So very quickly, we'll do birthdays. Happy Facebook birthday for those that celebrated on Saturday. Lior Nucci turned 50, beautiful milestone. I will be celebrating it towards the end of the year. And then on Sunday, a whole bunch of people, wow, just, old friends and new friends. I'm just going up and down the list. There's Sean Finnegan, there's Walps, there's Dan Funk, there's Kathleen Riordan, and of course, Stephen Black. Stephen, what a real mensch he is. He's not Jewish, but if he was, he'd be an ultra mensch. Just want to say happy birthday to you. And then, of course, on LinkedIn, those that celebrated on Saturday, happy birthday to Scott, to Matt. On Sunday, there's Max, there's Mohammed, there's Antonio. And then finally today, in particular, my cousin Talia Perkins, who's celebrating. So there weren't too many people on both Facebook and LinkedIn, so I combined them. And two more people got to single out Ted Moon and, of course, previous guest Piers Fawkes. Well, that was a lot of preamble, no doubt, but it was needed and it was necessary. And now it's time. Hold on, lots of comments. Is that Melania? Where? I don't see which slide. I wonder what he was talking about with respect to Melania. And then, of course, David says muscle weighs more than fat. Look, I'll give you another Yiddish word. I have a lot of schmaltz on me at the moment. David and I went on one of the most amazing runs together. I think I forget what it was called. I'm sure David will put it in the comments. It was called the trail. What was it called? The Boston Trail. When I went to visit with him and speak to his company, I think back about that run and about the time together. We just had such an amazing time. So David, I'm glad you're part of the show today. But anyway, time is getting on, and we need to talk about nerves. So let's just get right into it as well. So, one of the most truly valuable courses that I ever completed at college was called Professional Communications, or Profcom for short. Little did I know how much public speaking I would end up doing as a core part of my business. Today, with 5 books authored and a platform of thought leadership associated with all things digital, innovation, change, and growth, I've spoken in almost 50 countries, including the likes of Croatia, Venezuela, China, Bermuda. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So now I just talk about talking. Well, today's soliloquy is just to share with you a few public speaking tips about nerves and confidence that I learned and picked up in this course and along the way. So first of all, record yourself. Use video. In one exercise, we were taped in front of our classmates, and then we got to watch ourselves back together with our professor in class. In almost every case, people said the same thing. I was so nervous when I gave the presentation, and the others responded with, "You couldn't tell." Remember that. People don't realize how nervous you are unless you explicitly tell them. So don't. Never admit you're nervous. And don't apologize, ever. If you lose your place, find it. Take your time. The silence might seem like an eternity to you, but to your audience, it's insignificant, and they'll forget all about it unless you apologize, unless you fall to pieces or draw their attention to the pause. Now, implicit tells are a little trickier. Your body will betray you, so you have to fool your body. One thing you'll want to avoid is using something like a laser pointer, because those shakes are a dead giveaway. Remember, nerves are natural. Nerves are normal. So embrace them, accept them, work with them. Prof. Com ended up laying an unbelievable foundation for me, and I'm only too happy to pay it forward. Remember, confidence is as much perceived by the audience as it is projected by the presenter. But whichever way you slice it, there's no substitution for preparation, preparation, preparation in that order. And good luck, everyone out there looking to do any form of public speaking in the near and not too distant future. Well, now it's time to bring on my guest. Just picture the scene. There's a presentation or interview coming up, and just thinking about it makes your mouth dry and your stomach burn. Slow down, breathe deeply, and get in touch with Nick Diakanastasis. Whether that's breath control, how you express yourself, or stopping your voice from shaking, Nick can help. Half Greek, half Swiss, linguist turned actor turned back linguist turned coach, Nick is, and he claims that nobody can pronounce his surname on the first try, but I'm pretty sure I just did. Again, preparation, preparation, preparation. Nick helps people get over that stage fright and speak to an audience with confidence and clarity. And today he is my guest. Let's bring him onto the show. Welcome, Nick.
Hi, Joseph. Thanks for having me. I really, really enjoyed that intro. I will have to say, not just the name, but everything.
Well, you know, what I loved about what you did actually is you encouraged me to have a little bit of fun with it. You said, kind of riff a little bit or use a little bit of creative license, and I love that. And it's funny. I've had people on the show that, like Scott McCain, a true professional. He has everything on his website. He has his long bio, a short bio, a shorter bio. He's got all the links. He's got clips. He's got video. He's got high-res photos. He's a complete pro. And you know what? I love his approach as much as I love your approach, which just says, you know what? Have a little bit of fun with this, because automatically you've disarmed me. I hope I've disarmed you. And together we disarm our audience. And so we don't have to imagine them naked.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if I have that habit anyway of imagining my audience naked. But just in case anyone else does, it's not necessary to do a good presentation.
And so is there any truth to that even at all, like this whole idea of imagining your audience naked?
I don't know. I think it's just to disarm them in your mind, to not see them as a threat, because the fight and flight response kicks in when you're on a stage, literally or virtually. and you might see the audience as a threat. So I guess this is a way to make you feel safe, but I think it's also a way to make you feel weirded out. So I wouldn't really recommend that.
Right, and then you don't want to start like pointing at them and laughing at them, especially the guys, right? So
I don't do that. My mom always tells me, "Oh, imagine that they're all cabbages." I'm like, that doesn't make it any better either, though. They're people. They're fine. They're not going to bite, hopefully.
Hold on a second. What about naked cabbages?
Wow. I don't know. That went very meta. I don't imagine them as dressed cabbages in the first place.
All right, so let's have a little bit more fun and talk about some fun facts associated with you, my friend. So first of all, and this is kind of crazy, you were a door-to-door salesman, and you were pretty bad at it.
Yeah, I mean, that was straight. You've definitely gone all the way here. That was straight after drama school, so I hadn't really landed anything that paid well yet, and I really needed a job. So I responded to a job listing for a double glazing company, and they needed canvassers. That's what they call them here in the UK. So door salespeople. So I was literally going door to door and selling doors and windows and stuff like that. That was double glazed, and it was really not fun. I lasted about 3 weeks before I rage quit. And it was in the winter as well in London, which is freezing.
Wait, did you say you rage quit?
Yeah, I rage quit.
So what is that? You just closed the app, basically?
I just quit on the spot. I told my supervisor, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm not coming back tomorrow. The end. And I just walked out.
So I'll tell you something about me, which is I also did a brief stint of door to door selling, and I'll never forget the product. It was called Dryer 2000, and essentially what it was some kind of it was meant to dry your clothes. Yeah. And so it had like a fan and hot air coming from the bottom, but it was this. I don't know. It was like a clothesline, one of those like cheap clotheslines,
right?
With like some kind of like top around it, and this fan at the bottom. And then the most bizarre thing about it was they said it doubled up, and this is a South African thing. It doubled up as a biltong maker, which is like beef jerky.
Yeah.
So you could make your own beef jerky or biltong at home when you weren't drying your clothes. Needless to say, I never sold a single one, and I think I also rage quit.
Wow. It was not fun, and I wasn't good at it because it's pretty hard to be good at something you don't actually enjoy. I mean, it was miserable and freezing, and by and large, not making money. So I wasn't very motivated after a certain point.
All right, so now we've got one more little fun fact for you, and it's an interesting one, which is, for some reason, you've had the weirdest dream since you were a child. And look, there you are in the upside down. Yeah. Surprisingly, the same headshot as the previous one. I don't know how that happened. Yeah. But talk a little bit about your dreams. What's going on here?
God. I don't know. I think maybe I just had a lot of issues to unravel. As I'm getting older and calmer, I remember my dreams less and less frequently, and they tend to get less elaborate and less bizarre. But as a child, good God, I mean, maybe I haven't had that exact scene in a dream, but I've probably had a bunch of really similar ones. It was always really bizarre stuff, and I'm pretty sure that I've died pretty much every way humanly possible in my dreams, like run over, blown up, bisected, stabbed, decapitated, sacrificed, whatever. I don't know why.
That's actually quite funny, sacrifice. But wait, again, like, so I heard, when we're not talking about naked cabbages, how about naked cannibalistic cabbages cooking you instead of you cooking the cabbage? But isn't it true, though, that if you die in your dream, then you die in real life? Well, clearly it's not, unless you're an apparition.
I'm a figment of your imagination. I'm not actually here.
But you've actually died. You've remembered
than I can count. Yeah. I mean, when I die in the dream, I tend to wake up in real life. So it's the end of the dream.
So if there is a beautiful segue to the topic at hand,
let's see how we can do that.
That's why they're paying me the big bucks. But it would be this idea of, I mean, I wonder how many people have actually dreamt of, you know, either being naked themselves giving a presentation or just giving a presentation, and how much stage fright is either, you know, literally a part of those dreams, or maybe, you know, metaphorically they're dreaming of something when they have to give a big presentation. Has that ever crossed your path? Have people ever spoken to you about dreams or nightmares, knowing that they're about to give the presentation of their lives?
Yeah, I mean, not just in this capacity, that this is apparently quite a common nightmare, that you're naked in front of your class or in front of your office and you have to do some kind of presentation. I personally haven't had it, but I've heard that it's quite a common thing, actually.
All right, so we're going to talk a lot about, you know, presentations and countering stage fright, but but there's something I wanted to cover with you first, and that's and you know, and you know, when we were talking earlier this morning, you have all types of clients and you work with all types of people, but you, by your own definition, you are an extreme introvert. So what is that? Let's define introvert, extrovert, extreme introvert. We'll even touch on the whole idea of the extroverted, introverted, which is what I think I am. So let's talk a little bit about those. What are the differences from your perspective, and why is that important as it relates to thinking about public speaking and presentation skills and countering stage fright?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, the definitions of those two things. I mean, it's not a yes or no thing, it's a spectrum. So from extroversion to introversion, I think I'm pretty much at the end of that spectrum. So I'm pretty much like a 10 out of 10, or at least a 9 out of 10 introvert. Introvert, by and large, just means that you are drained by social interaction. So you much prefer your own company than hanging out with other people. And that's definitely me. Like 90% of the time, easily, I'd rather just be by myself, and I don't feel lonely. I just enjoy my own company more than I enjoy other people's company the vast majority of time. Not that I think I'm too good for them or anything. It's just how I tick. Social interaction, even if it's with people that I actually like, it drains me a lot. And introverts tend to be more thinkers than doers. So that's definitely one of my obstacles that I had to overcome in life, to force myself to stop thinking and overthinking and existing in my head and actually taking action and stepping out into the world. And then extroverts are the opposite. Extroverts tend to do first and think later, and they tend to be energized by social interaction. So they need a lot less. It doesn't mean that they never need any me time or any break, but they need a lot less. And for them, a lack of social interaction is much more likely to wear them out than too much social interaction. That's kind of the short of it.
So is it true then that maybe we've been, so you've almost debunked myth number one, which is it's not either or, but a continuum or a spectrum. Yeah. But the other one is this idea that, you know, that introverts are not it's not necessarily about being shy or unable, right? Because it's about this, you know, you spoke about being drained by and preferring to be by yourself. Because the first thing I was thinking, I'm sure people are thinking too watching, which is, wait, if he says he is a 10 out of 10, an extreme introvert, he's an actor, he's doing a pretty damn good job.
Former actor, I don't perform anymore, but yeah.
he's on the show, he's talking, he's smiling, he's gregarious, he's charismatic, you know.
Thank you. I don't know if they're thinking that, but thank you.
I am, you know.
Yeah.
But you're saying that in actual fact, we've been thinking about it all wrong. And so therefore, if I had to just ... it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, being able to deliver a speech or being on stage should be something that anyone can do, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a skill rather than a personality trait. That doesn't mean that different people don't have different levels of affinity for it, just like with anything else. Like some people, you were talking about your weight before. Weight loss is to an extent a skill. Like some people, you could put a gun to their head, they would have no idea how many calories, how many grams of anything they've eaten today or at any point, but they just stay trim year in, year out. And there are other people who need to count every little thing, but most people can probably maintain their weight. Most people can learn how to run or how to, I don't know, aim correctly to do archery or to play football and whatnot. Different people are obviously born a few steps ahead or a few steps behind, but anyone can do it. Being an introvert versus an extrovert just means you're going to have different challenges, one. And then two, I really like what you touched upon when it comes to shyness and social anxiety. I will say that there does seem to be more of an overlap with introversion and social anxiety and meekness, I guess, but it's not 100% overlap. You can very much be someone who really enjoys being around people, really likes interacting with other people, but at the same time, it terrifies them. Like I know a lot of people who really want to be out there. They want to be a social butterfly. They're just bad at it. They get awkward and they feel vulnerable when they have to interact with somebody else.
I really love what you said about it being a skill, and we'll come back to that shortly. But it was also interesting to me how you spoke about weight loss even as a skill, as opposed to, but as opposed to metabolism, etc. Because you spoke about almost a natural affinity towards managing weight and managing the mental hurdles and the mental gymnastics of being able to be in command and be in control, which again, you know, what does it mean to be in command and be in control? You can be in command and control of your nerves, you know, of your ability to counter all of the, you know, these jitters and butterflies and stage fright. So I think that was a very interesting angle that you brought to the table.
Oh, thank you. It is definitely a skill. So that means that what you said about practice, practice, practice in your soliloquy, I love that. I feel like you've kind of partially done my job for me today. Anyway, with your soliloquy, you touched upon a bunch of stuff that I was going to talk about anyway. So because it is a skill, it is largely about practice and it is about doing stuff. And that's one of my, we're starting off with a rant already. I don't know if this is good or not, but this is one of my biggest beefs with a lot of the public speaking or presentation skills device floating around out there, that it's some kind of inner thing. And it's by and large, it's not. It's about actionable technical stuff. So you need to practice, you need to record yourself and or have an external eye. You need to do certain technical skills with your body language, with your voice, with your breathing. I think the idea that you can just stand in front of a mirror and give yourself affirmations and like mindset your inner blocks or whatever, unleash your confidence, and this is magically going to make you a good public speaker. That is quite a popular opinion floating around on LinkedIn, and it really irritates me because simply being confident does not make you competent, if that makes any sense. If the confidence comes from something real, that's great, but simply bigging yourself up and psyching yourself up does not make you good. The same way that it wouldn't work that way with any other skill. Like if you are, has Joseph disappeared? What's going on?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
This is what we call the voice of God angle, and it's where we get, everybody just gets to focus on you, your full screen, which is probably now I realize probably not the best thing for an introvert, but still,
it's fine.
I'm back.
I just want to be sure that I'm not like talking to myself. I lost my thread now. What was I talking about? Yeah, the way that it would be with any other skill, for example, cooking, right? So if you cook and serve people food, how tasty and or healthy it's going to be pretty much exclusively depends on your skill as a cook. The fact that you feel confident about your cooking or not doesn't really factor that much into it. So if you want to take a cooking course, these people better teach you how to be a better cook. They better teach you the techniques, how to get the best ingredients, etc. Simply feeling confident about your cooking is not going to make the food any better. And it's the same with public speaking. So the audience cannot read your mind. It's exactly as you said about the nerves. Nerves in a lot of people, but not everyone, have certain physical tells like a shaky voice, shallow breathing, weird body language, twitches, etc. And that's what the audience can read. They cannot read your mind. If you can control certain physical aspects, they're not going to know that you're nervous.
Did you ever personally suffer from acute stage fright and a lot of these?
Yeah. It was so bad. It was bad with acting or speaking, and it was even worse when I had to sing at drama school in front of an audience. It was so bad. My mouth was so dry that I had to keep drinking water like every 10 seconds to the point where I just had to keep going to the toilet like 10 times during a single lesson. It was not quite as bad with the just speaking or acting, but yeah, I was suffering from shaky voice. I was suffering from nausea. I was suffering from breaking out in sweats like I'm a junkie. Everything. I was like a caricature. Like, it was like that. It was so bad. You have no idea. It was so bad.
Okay, so how did you counter that? How did you beat that? And then what is the spark that makes you say, you know what, I think I can take these lessons or learnings or insights and now help others that were like me?
A lot of very boring technical stuff. So it was learning how to control my breath, for example. So I had to really practice diaphragmatic breathing. I don't know if people know what that is, but that's when you breathe deeply into your core. So if you do something like yoga, for example, or singing, you might have heard of that already. So the diaphragm is a muscle that is right under your rib cage. So when you do that kind of deep breathing, most people don't. Most people have shallow clavicular breathing, so they breathe mostly into their chest, and they often breathe in through their mouth as well instead of through their nose. So you breathe in deeply through your nose into your core, so your stomach should expand and contract like a baby's. If you watch, that's actually how we're designed to breathe. If you watch babies how they breathe, that's what they do. Their stomach inflates and deflates like a balloon, and then things like anxiety and insecurities and social programming kicks in, and you tend to quit. So I had to relearn that, as we all did at drama school. I had to do tons of vocal exercises, vocal warm-ups before everybody else arrived. I just had to sit there and be like, to warm up everything. It was not fun. It is really boring technical stuff, but that's the stuff that works actually, rather than trying to manifest feelings out of thin air. And all kinds of physical stretches as well, because if you're getting the anxiety, if you're getting the adrenaline kicking in, it causes all kinds of physical tension. And then that affects your mind as well. It's not just the mind that affects the body, as you said, that is true, but it's also the body that affects the mind. It's more like a feedback loop. So if you're uncomfortable physically, this is tight and that is tight, and you're sweating here and you're trembling there, and you're not breathing into your core, it's really hard to actually feel comfortable. It was really boring stuff. And I would say it took about the first term or the first 4 months or so before I got it under control.
By the way, Dave has to run, but he said thank you.
Thank you.
And Dave, you can always watch the replay and come hang out with us in the after show. But he also just I asked about the run. It was called Great Meadows near the Battle Road. That's what it was called, the Battle Road. And Leslie said she thinks that's a great name for a book. So there you go. So let me ask you a question. Nerves. So I still want to come back to what made you think that, or what made you decide to focus on this and helping others. But before I forget, is it? I mean, this is another almost like myth, I suppose, or generalization or stereotype. Is it important to get nervous or to feel nervous, or is it a danger sign if you have no nerves and you're about to present in front of 1,000 people?
Well, I don't know if it's important, because that almost implies that it's a choice, and it probably isn't. It's almost impossible to completely get rid of nerves. So one of my favorite professors in drama school used to tell us, don't listen to people who say, don't get nerves. You'll stop getting nerves when you're dead and not a moment before. So you'll get some nerves, and it's about working with them as opposed to trying to completely get rid of them. I don't think that's possible. And if you get absolutely no nerves before showing up in front of an audience, that might just mean that you don't care at all, or that your nerves have gone so overboard that you've hit the point where you're just numb because your brain is short-circuited. So you might not feel the heartbeat and the breathing and the sweating and whatnot, just because you've gone completely numb. You've had an absolute brain fart situation. I don't think it's a good sign. I always get at least a bit of nerves, and the vast majority of people, even trained performers, they will get at least some nerves before showing up in front of an audience. It shows that you care to some extent.
I mean, I love that point. I had this very weird. Well, two things happened with me. One is I find that I'm not nervous enough, and I want to be more nervous at times. But I'm so energized and excited that in a way it seems to almost It almost seems to overshadow if there are nerves there. Whatever nerves there are completely overshadowed by just this excitement of wanting to perform and inspire and just go get them. And that's how I kind of react.
Well, excitement is nerves as well. Nerves does not necessarily have to be negative. It doesn't have to be fear. It can be excitement as well. That's nerve.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about it that way. And then I have something else that's very weird, which maybe you can. I feel like you're my therapist today, which is and
you might be my therapist when we get into why I actually went to drama school if I'm not a people person at all. We'll see. We'll analyze each other.
We'll help each other. But
yeah, exactly.
I find that I'm more nervous in much smaller crowds. So like the worst thing for me is a meeting with like 4 people or 5 people in a conference room where all the eyes are like on you and you like, did I interrupt that person, and is it the right time to talk? So when I'm like, if I'm on stage in front of 1,000 people, almost no nerves. On a Zoom call sometimes with 4 or 5 people, I'm freaking out. I don't even understand why.
Yeah, well, I don't know for a fact, but my assumption is, just from doing this for a while, when you have a captive audience, essentially, when you're on stage and you have 100 or 1,000 people looking at you, your audience is almost captive. So even though you have more people, you also have more control over the situation. Whereas if you're in a small room with 3 or 4 people, you might not feel that you're in control, and that's what's freaking you out. You're like, oh, what's going to happen? Well, I can't really steer the conversation the way that I want to. If you're giving a TED talk, you're completely in control, for the better or for the worse. I mean, you might completely screw it up, but if you prepare yourself accordingly, there's actually less that could potentially go wrong, because the audience is mostly passive. They're not doing much.
So this is the part of the show where I get to try and stump you with a quote that is connected to what we've been talking about.
Oh, great.
You know, and this is your quote: "Quiet people have the loudest minds."
I'm going to say that this is true for me. I don't know if it's true for all quiet people. I can't be the spokesperson, but yeah.
But who said it?
Oh, who the hell knows? Oscar Wilde? I have absolutely no idea.
It's funny, by the way, you know, when in doubt, go to Oscar Wilde, go to Winston
Pretty
Churchill,
much,
go to Mark Twain, go to Ernest Hemingway. But in actual fact, I really love this. It was actually Stephen Hawking.
Wow. My second choice was going to be Steve Jobs, but that's still off the mark.
You would have got half a point, because at least you got the Steve
First
part.
name, yeah.
But I thought it was interesting because, you know, again, we've I think addressed and debunked so many interesting things associated with, you know, presenting and recognizing that it's really not about so much introversion or extroversion. But in actual fact, if it's true that quiet people have the loudest minds, maybe introverts are even better at speaking, or have this, at least this power inside that is typically suppressed, right? Because we don't expect it from them. And yet maybe given that opportunity and platform and skills training, they're able to rise up and maybe share something that's a little bit more let's say function and less form.
Maybe that's a good angle, not just because it flatters me, but some of the world's most popular, most charismatic public speakers do identify as introverts. So it's not, I don't know if introverts are better. It's just that the two sides, the introverts and the extroverts, we just have different challenges. So, for example, one of our major challenges as in introverts is that we tend to be thinkers, and often overthinkers rather than doers. So that can get us stuck in our head. So we are more observers than anything else. So if we have to actually be the ones who give the information as opposed to the ones who absorb the information, that can short circuit us. But, you know, extroverts have their own challenges, because introverts are the minority of the population. But if you actually look at the statistics, most people, something like 70 or 80%, have at least some degree of public speaking fear. So that means that includes most extroverts as well. They just struggle with different things. Like, for example, extroverts tend to have a harder time that's a bad term, observing and analyzing what the audience is doing. So that can create a different kind of disconnect if they're worse at listening or absorbing. Extroverts also, these are generalizations. Like I'm sure people are going to pop up and be like, well, I know someone, I know, but just broadly speaking, extroverts tend to also often struggle with silence. So they feel the need to fill every little second with information that can actually overload their audience and make their points more muddled. We have different struggles. I don't know if introverts are actually better public speakers even after training. We just come from a different angle and we have our own strengths and weaknesses.
It's also a very unique point at which the two come together, because it has to do with insecurity. Now, I'm not sure whether I am in fact an extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I actually believe that I am an extroverted introvert. And, you know, there are a whole bunch of signs. For example, you're great with people until you're not. And that also, like
me as well.
Yeah. And so, you know, you like going out, but then you want to ghost. And that's exactly what happens to me. Is I will go out and if I'm not the life of the party, I certainly, you know, I certainly am just energized by everyone out there. And then something happens. It's like a switch. And I just want to get the hell out of there. And I just want to go home. And I'm like, I'm done with these people that are also like my people, that are like my best friends. And so I've done started to do some interesting, you know, studying just to find out what this means and how I can tap into it. But I would tell you that, you know, verbal diarrhea was a big problem until the pandemic hit. And now I'm trying to get better at listening and as I call it, respecting the silence.
Yeah, silence is really good. And it's what you said about perception, because I might, as a huge introvert, I tend to not talk just for the sake of talking, and I tend to be someone who doesn't like small talk. And that can make, if someone is on the more extroverted side and we're in the same room together, they might interpret that as an awkward silence, but to me, it's not awkward. I don't feel this is a weird situation. I just don't feel the need to fill the silence with something. I'll say something if I feel like I have something important to share, but talking just for the sake of talking, I'm like, oh, I can't, I don't want to. It's not interesting to me. So it's the silence in of itself is not anything. It's about what you make it or how you interpret it. It's not positive or negative.
Well, I enjoy that point you made, right? Which is, again, as I spoke about in my soliloquy, you know, perceived confidence, you know, which is, you might also be projecting confidence. And I love the point, right? Confidence doesn't equal competence, but they may not interpret that as confident. They might interpret it as overconfidence or even arrogance. And so what you're saying is, I'm at peace with my silence. Now, you may not be, because, but that's okay in this case, which is like, I'm secure. You know, that's your issue, that's your problem, but it's not mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened several times that someone said, oh, the first time that we met or when we were here and there, it was a bit awkward. And I'll say, was it? They were like, yeah, it was. You didn't really say much and there was so much silence. We're like, oh, I didn't feel awkward. And I didn't see that as us having an awkward moment. That's just me being in my flow and doing what I do if left to my own devices, which is generally listen and observe rather than talk.
Brian is watching on YouTube, and he said he recently heard about the term omnivert, the ability to draw energy either externally or internally. Have you heard about that one?
No, I've heard of ambivert, which is the new one, which is a bit apparently smack down in the middle and is neither extrovert nor introvert. I'm not convinced that's a thing. So omnivert might even be further of a stretch for my mind. I think most people lean on one side. It's about what we said about a spectrum. So I think some people will say, oh, well, I don't want to spend literally every single waking moment with other people, so that means I must be an introvert, or vice versa. Like, there was that one time where I didn't go out, so I'm totally an introvert. I'm like, it's not a yes, no, it's a percentage breakdown. I think most people probably lean, at least. I think when you say introverted, extrovert, I think you probably lean more on extroversion, but you're not strongly extroverted to the point where you just want to be around people all the time. That would be my diagnosis.
I'm actually wondering if maybe herbivore is something, which is, I'm thinking still about flesh-eating cabbages.
Right.
So I keep coming back to your dreams, but if you're not a
The cabbages
flesh-eating,
were your dream, not mine.
oh,
But yeah.
you make a good point. David actually asked, how do you know at the end of the day? And now I'll add a question and bring it back to public speaking, which is how do you know if you're an extrovert or an introvert, and how do you channel or harness that learning to be a better public speaker?
Well, I don't know if David was here because we asked that question about introvert and extrovert right at the beginning of the show. But just to recap, introverts are drained by social interaction, even with people that we like. So we prefer to spend our time alone most of the time, and extroverts are the opposite. And also, broadly speaking, introverts tend to think and then act, and extroverts tend to act and then think. That's the short version of it. As for public speaking, yeah, you're gonna have to work with your strengths and try to. I know it sounds really counterintuitive to try and compensate for your weakness. Not counterintuitive, judgmental is the right word. Trying to compensate for your weaknesses, but that's why one size doesn't fit all. So if I'm coaching someone in public speaking, I'll really have to see what their tendencies are, or their tendencies to kind of hold back and get really quiet and no one can understand what they're saying. And you have to be like, what? Is that their tendency? Because they're more likely to be an introvert if that's their tendency to really need prodding to get anything out. Or are they the kind of person who just talks at you at 5 miles an hour and I'll need to get them to slow down and maybe do a bit of filtering before they just blurt everything out? It really depends on who you are.
What I really love about your program and your technique is that you have one service where people can actually submit clips of video of them in action, ironically very connected to my soliloquy. And then and I'm sure don't judge or critique, but offer, I'm sure, very nurturing, constructive feedback. But I think that's a huge tip for people, which is make sure that you are recorded when you are presenting, because you learn so much about yourself in the process.
There is so much that happens once that adrenaline kicks in. There is so much that happens. I mean, sometimes your brain just goes blank. It even happens to me sometimes because I'll record videos for LinkedIn, like I'll probably upload a couple a week. And sometimes I sit in front of the camera, I press record, and then when I watch it back, I shock myself. I'm like, did I just say that? Or did I just do that? Because some part just short circuits and you're not even aware of what you're doing. It is very important to have an external eye, whether that's your camera, whether that's someone like me, ideally both. But yeah, even if you just start there, like if you take the audience, if you take away one thing from today, and it's not the cabbages, then it would be that record yourself when you do any kind of elevator pitch presentation. Let's say you want to promote yourself on social media. So you want to do a little intro video about, hi, I'm so-and-so and I help blah demographic with X problem. If you record yourself and watch it back, chances are the first few times you're going to think, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't even know. You're not even registering it while you're recording. Like sometimes it's happened to me when I was tired because I'm trilingual. So sometimes when I'm tired, I'll switch languages and I don't register until the other person brings it up. So I'll be watching it, the video, and I'll be speaking in English and randomly German is going to show up in there and then I'll switch back to English. But in my mind, that transition doesn't register if I'm tired. So I'm like, better do that video again because my audience is not going to follow that.
I actually think that, I'm going to emphasize your emphasis of the emphasis, which is now in the age of COVID, with all of this march to virtual and all of this this difference in the way that we speak, it's actually a lot easier to have someone watching you. And if you can't record it, which is of course so easy, just hit the record button on Zoom, or they will be, even to get, I think, a partner, a spouse, a family member, a colleague, to get a comp to log in and dial in and watch you in action and give you that feedback. It seems like what I did at Professional Communications now, anyone and everyone can do, and you can only learn from it in the process.
Yeah. I mean, bear in mind, obviously, not all feedback is created equal, but some of the really big things that they don't need to be any kind of trained performer or specialist to see, like if you're switching languages and not making any sense, or if you're doing the weirdest verbal
No, that's true.
tics. Yeah, I mean, there are things that they will be able to see just as an audience member. Even just having that audience member helps.
So I want to ask you maybe a couple more questions about speaking in the age of COVID,
Yeah.
and then make sure that we still have a few minutes to talk about this thing that just fascinated me about something you wanted to talk about, toxic positivity. I'm like dying to find out. But so I'll ask the questions. We can get through them as quickly as you like or not. This is your show. I'm just the host. So the first idea is, this new normal that we're living in right now with this march to virtual, how does it actually help and aid introverts maybe that might have struggled before in the old or traditional way of standing on a stage?
It does both. It's a double-edged sword. So it helps in certain ways, but it makes it worse in other ways. So the way that it helps is obviously it is easier, quote unquote, as in quicker. There are fewer barriers to getting in front of an audience because you just need to sit in front of a camera. You don't need to get outside. You don't need to travel anywhere. So that, if something scares you or you find it troublesome, the more barriers there are, the less likely you are to actually do it. So I think introverts might have an easier time actually getting in front of the audience. Now, what happens once you are in front of the audience might be a different story, but the barrier of entry, I think, is lower now. But there are struggles in different ways, like speaking to an audience on camera is not exactly the same as speaking on stage. Obviously, a lot of the things map over, but as everyone can see here, the camera shows a lot less of you most of the time, so you have less to work with, which means that the things that you can see, like your face, and I guess you're just about your shoulders and up, that stuff needs to work harder, because if someone's already boring or awkward, if you see them full body on stage or you're sitting at the same table with them, it's going to be 10 times worse once they are actually here, because there's so much less to work with. So what is on camera, what is perceivable, it really needs to work. You might need to emote more. You might need to use more vocal inflections. You might need to dial it up a bit. That's another thing that people can take away from today. The thing that I have to tell people all the time when we start working together is more, especially if you're someone who's naturally not that effusive or not that dramatic. Once anxiety kicks in, it's very, very common for people to go completely deadpan, which means you have no impact. So they sit in front of a camera and they start talking in a way like this, and everything sounds the same, and they have no inflection, no variety. Everything is like this. They talk like they're being held at gunpoint, basically. So you need to be even more conscious of that, and you need to add more, like more pizzazz, more energy, more variety, more everything.
And I've seen a lot of people choose to stand up when they're presenting virtually as opposed to sitting down. And my tendency is to sit down, but I can see why that most likely is not a good idea.
You can do that. It depends on whether that makes you feel more comfortable or not. I mean, just like you, if I'm on camera, I do prefer to sit down. But for some people, it just feels so awkward that once they sit down, it's like they get locked in place mentally and they just don't do anything. Whereas if they stand up, they're much more likely to gesture, to use some kind of variety and dynamics in their delivery. It's not one size fits all, unfortunately.
All right. So in the time that we have left, I got to ask you about toxic optimism. I said toxic positivity, but toxic optimism. What is toxic optimism, and why do you want to rant about it?
That's just something that I've been seeing a lot. This is little, if anything, to do with public speaking.
I know, it's just we had to discuss it.
Yeah, in case people are waiting for some kind of insider. And no, it's just a rant. Because you asked, what do you want to talk about? So I was like, well, here's what's been getting on my nerves since the lockdown began. So toxic positivity is this mentality that you're almost not allowed to have negative feelings, which I feel, we're going too deep now, is almost like denying yourself half of your humanity, because we're not just made of sugary, sweet, nice stuff. We're also we are built to experience negative emotions sometimes, and I think it's completely human to feel things like stress, fear in the face of uncertainty, dread, any grief, any of these things that a lot of us, if not most of us, have been feeling over the past few months. And the toxic positivity is this attitude that, positive vibes only, practice gratitude, hashtag be kind, all that stuff that says that you must keep up the charade that everything is perfect and positive. You're never allowed to feel negative. You're never allowed to feel scared. Feeling negative can sometimes be quite isolating because you feel these negative emotions, but then you also feel that nobody wants to hear about it. And you know that if you dare open up about them, you're just going to get told, oh, just think more positive. Oh, positive thoughts only, dude. Oh, cheer up. Don't be negative. And you're like, sometimes you just need to get it out of your system, right? You need to let it run its cycle, the negative emotion, and then you're done. At least that's how it works for me. Like if I get down, if I get stressed, if I feel a bit of dread for the future in this uncertain time, what works for me is to actually experience that negative feeling, and then I digest it, and then it's done. Whereas trying to will myself not to feel it just prolongs the agony. It doesn't actually get me to the next stage, which is I'm fine again, if that makes sense. So toxic positivity, I think it's toxic because it's meant to be positive, but it doesn't actually result in anything good. It just results in you staying stuck and trying to will yourself to stay positive, as opposed to being positive because you get through the bad stuff. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
There are obviously many applications and interpretations of that. Maybe we'll discuss them in the Zoom after show. But certainly, certainly one of them is this idea of success theater, which is a GE almost case study, where or we've seen it actually with respect to even certain governments and leaders of governments, no names mentioned, not wanting to share negative news or being able to, or trying to paint a picture that is unrealistic. And I think also, for public speaking, if there's a final application or interpretation, it might be, how do you deliver a message that is meant to not necessarily fire and brimstone, but a message that's meant to kind of like really challenge and shock your audience and get them to stand up and take action and find a balance between, proactive, constructive, positive, but also not pandering to them. And I think, again, if there's a great way to wrap this up, whether it's optimist, pessimist, whether it's introvert, extrovert, instead of thinking about life as on-off binary 1-0, think about the continuum, think about the transitions, think about the fact that you can move backwards and forwards almost rhythmically like a pendulum, and even do that in the same presentation.
Yeah, I mean, dynamics are always more interesting. A fellow actor that I know, not from drama school, always says that the best monologues feel like dialogues, and that's really a good way to put a presentation. If it's a monologue, it doesn't need to have that ebb and flow. It does need to have that ebb and flow, and it does need to have different dynamics. If it's just one note, like I am angry, that's it, and I'll follow it for 20 minutes, that's not really interesting to watch, and that's not impactful if it's not interesting.
I love that as a way to end the show. I'm thinking even of my seated soliloquies. I need to make sure that it is a seated dialoquy. I'm pretty sure that's not a real word.
Dialogue, but yeah.
but that's my word. If you want to find out about Nick, don't look for him on Twitter because he's not there.
Not on Twitter, no.
He's not there, but he's very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you follow him on LinkedIn, over the course of the next few weeks, you're going to find out about a group program that he's doing, a 4-week group program on virtual public speaking. So not just countering stage fright, but actually doing it in a virtual environment. You can find out more about Nick, and you can go to his website, right? At Nick, I can't pronounce it. Nick Diakan.
Yeah, Nick Diakan.
Not Nick Diakant, but Nick Diakan. And again, if you want to find out some techniques from him, you can go to Tips from Nick. Nick, final word for you, and then we'll scoot on over to the after show. I know you have limited time, but final words are yours, my friend.
Oh, am I doing the goodbye notes?
If you like.
Yeah. Think if you're doing any kind of presentation, any kind of public speaking, if you find yourself in a situation where you need to address an audience, get out of your head and focus on your audience. The one thing you need to remember is it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not time for navel gazing. It is time to teach, to give, to transmit, to gift. There you go.
Perfect way to end. So let's go on over to that Zoom after show, and I will be back tomorrow for the rest of you. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you, Nick.
All right. See you.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.